This is the Female Flex, brought to you by spiritualvirago.com. Welcome to the Female Flex. I'm your host, Stacy Nichols, owner of spiritualvirago.com. Today I'm going to be talking about my experience with ayahuasca. And this is really going to be talking about why people who have suffered from complex PTSD or PTSD should really consider very deeply before doing ayahuasca, because it could really go either way. It can either re-traumatize you, your body can view it as a trauma, and you're going to feel worse, or some people have experienced positive benefits from doing the ayahuasca and they feel that it's been a healing experience. In my case, it was re-traumatizing, and I want to kind of walk through the full experience of what happened that day. It's all written down in my blog if you want to check it out there, like literally every detail. It's called My PTSD Brain Blocked, My Ayahuasca Trip. That's the name of the post. So basically what happened, just some kind of background about me first so you understand. My mom was an alcoholic, is an alcoholic. Her mom was an alcoholic, and her mom was an alcoholic. So 3 generations of alcoholic mothers, and my experience growing up was, narcissism, abuse, physical violence, and all of those things. And I mean, there was positive that came out of this experience. It helped me to understand that what my mom did to me was so deep that it affected how my brain functions. And that was helpful to know that, because I realized, okay, I need to really do some deeper, like hypnosis, or, I need to do something deeper to kind of fix what I'm trying to fix. So, I mean, it was helpful in that regard. But the reason this is important is because I'm going to talk later, after I experienced the ayahuasca, how I tried to kind of put the pieces together to understand what the hell had happened to me and why it hadn't been like anything I had read about at all. So this is what happened. Had kind of a bad experience for me. Well, okay, let's go back even further. I quit talking to my mom about 5 years ago when she started to treat my daughter the way that she had treated me. And I said, no, we're not doing that. And I had tried everything as far as, hey, this is my house, this is my kid, wasn't working. So I realized, like, really the only thing left at this point, I was already in my late 30s, was just to break off the relationship. So I did that to protect my daughter and stop this cycle of alcoholic mothers. I have never been drunk. I have never smoked anything. I have never experimented with any drugs, been high, etc. I get, natural childbirth, like really, I'm not into gas at the dentist. I've never had gas at the dentist. I don't do that kind of stuff. So anyway, when I had a situation a couple of months ago, and it reminded me of, it triggered some of that abuse from my mom. Since I had cut her out of my life, I haven't had anybody talk to me in that way that she would talk to me. You know what I'm saying? And what happened is someone talked to me that way, and they just dumped on me like, oh, these are all the things that are wrong with you. And I was like, whoa. And I just traveled right back to childhood right away. And it made me realize maybe there's some more work in there. Maybe it's time for the peel back the next layer, right? So that led me to go back to therapy, which led me to this family constellation workshop. The guy from the family constellation recommended I try ayahuasca, and I'm like, okay, I've never heard of that. When I mentioned to a friend of mine that this guy had recommended the ayahuasca. He's like, oh, I did ayahuasca a couple of years ago. And I was like, what? I was totally blown away. I had no idea that anyone that I knew had ever done any of that. So I currently, right now, I live in Cancun, Mexico. So I can just go, to a place near my house and I can do ayahuasca legally. I don't got to fly to, Ecuador for a week and spend thousands of dollars and do this whole retreat. I can go do it next weekend for $100 and whatever, right? So my friend is telling me that he had done it a couple of years ago. And he told me, he spent days telling me every detail he could remember of the experience. Was very positive. He had talked about just feeling this intense love, and he had talked about, getting in touch with dead relatives and all this and that. And I really felt like I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I'm not into substances. I've never been drugged like that. I don't feel comfortable. And I researched it, and I saw that ayahuasca is in the same family of psychedelic drugs as ketamine, which is a date rape drug. And I was like, no, I can't do it. But as he continued to talk about it, everything sort of fell together. And I thought, to be honest with you, my dad, the only non-alcoholic in my family, non-drug addict, he was my whole world. He passed away a couple days after my 30th birthday. And I thought, you know what? Any chance to reconnect with him, I'll take it. Even though it's really an extreme risk to me, my physical well-being, I'll do it, right? And my friend agreed to come with me, so I felt like, okay, date rape situation, I felt comfortable. I'm gonna have a man with me. He's Mexican. He speaks native Spanish. You know what I mean? Like okay, I feel comfortable. I feel safe. Plus, he's done the ayahuasca before. Okay, so everything kind of falls together to do it, and we get there. Everything's happening. Feels nice. Lovely temple. It's out in the jungle. Everything's fine. I mention to the guy that kind of cleanses our aura when we first arrive, never been drunk before, very low tolerance for any kind of substances. I had a surgery, and I told the guy, I'm very sensitive about this kind of stuff, and I've never been drunk, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, thank you for telling me. I'm going to give you a smaller dose of the anesthesia for the surgery. And with this child's dose of anesthesia, they could barely wake me up after the surgery. They were violently shaking me, saying, we've let you sleep twice as long as anybody else. I know it's the end of the day, but we have to leave now. You got to wake up and go home. And I remember when I was coming out of it, I really felt like I was in a very, very deep sleep with this child's dose of anesthesia after the surgery. So I know this about myself, and I'm very concerned, right? So I'm telling the aura cleansing guy, I'm just very concerned, and I'm wondering if I can get a smaller dose of the ayahuasca than whatever everyone else is going to take, because I know my own personal sensitivities to this. And he doesn't really say anything or really even seem to care, quite frankly. I mentioned it to the shaman, I think. Again, same type of response, not really, it's like he doesn't even hear me. So finally, it's my turn to go up to the front of the temple to drink the ayahuasca, which is in kind of a shot glass. You get a shot of it. And I tell the lady, you told us outside the temple that if our intuition tells us that we need to come back and get a second shot of ayahuasca, that we're allowed to do that. They have this window set up where, for an hour and a half, the ayahuasca is open to drink. And then after that, you can't have any more. I'm like, well, if my intuition can tell me that I need more, couldn't my intuition tell me that I need less? And she basically, this is her response, ayahuasca is very gentle. And okay, you're not hearing me, literally it's like they're not hearing me. And I'm like, fine. So I drink the whole thing. Go back, lay down on the floor, wait for it to take effect. They said it'll be like 20 minutes. About 20 minutes into it, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm seeing like wavy lines. I have my eyes closed, I'm seeing wavy lines. They're playing music, like live instruments, little guitars and stuff like that, drumming up at the front. And and the music starts to sound echoey and weird and far away, like you hear people describe a psychedelic experience. I'm like, oh, okay, it's starting now, And they said, surrender to the experience, and you're going to pass through a tunnel with things you're afraid of. And then when you come out on the, if you face your fears, you'll come out on the other side of that. And then that's when you'll experience the peace and the love. And you can ask the universe questions and reconnect with relatives that have passed away and all this and that. So I'm laying there and I'm just like, I surrender, I surrender, I surrender. And, asking my dad, like, are you here? And, I'm doing what they said to do. And I'm saying, I'm facing my fears. I'm here to face my fears. I'm here. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. And then I started to feel like, this is like the emperor's new clothes. It's bullshit. Nothing's happening. Like, if I want right now, I could visualize consciously, oh, my dad, I'm going to take you out to lunch with my daughter, and you're going to meet the child that I named after you. Because this is what I was hoping would happen, right? Nothing's happening. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll just visualize it. And I could literally be doing that at home for free without the puking, And I really started to feel very negative that I wasn't experiencing any woo like everyone says, And then I started to feel like this is what my mom and her, this is what they ruined their children for? Wavy lines and woo-woo music? And I got really negative, really upset. And I started to feel like I could collectively feel like the weakness and patheticness of all humanity needing to go get drunk and see wavy lines, and like how sad people are that they can't, accept reality and just live here without being drugged, And I'm thinking about hundreds of years ago, some guys crawling around in the Amazon looking for which leaves and roots they can rub together to make some concoction that will help them feel like they escape from reality, even if it's only for an hour. They'll be willing to puke and be sick for, and weak for days so they can escape reality for an hour, and it was very negative. It was very, very negative. It was just, I had not understood that this was a potential outcome of participating in the ayahuasca ceremony. And I watched like 3 documentaries, I read articles, everyone just talked about the positive side of it. So I didn't know what the hell was going on, quite frankly. That my friend that I brought with me, he is next to me. At one point, like, he jumped out of, we were on these like yoga mat things on the floor. He jumps up and he's just like, help, help, And I'm like, holy shit, like, I can't even move right now. I'm drugged. I am drugged. And I didn't know what was wrong with him. We're not supposed to touch anybody else, but I'm really concerned. He says he needs water, and he gets the water, and then he ran outside. I don't know what's going on, but it was scary. And you're laying there on the floor, and just this cacophony of people puking, like in this. The temple has this beautiful acoustics, and you're just hearing the echoey psychedelic noise of all the barfing, And when you get there, like, everyone's assigned their own bucket. So everyone else started to kind of come out of the ayahuasca experience, the trip is ending or whatever, around the same time. And they said, you're welcome to kind of dance or chant or whatever afterwards. And there was fruit available. They had a little fire going, and the shaman started speaking again, and I couldn't move. I just laid there like a heap on the floor. And I was aware that they had given me more ayahuasca than I needed. So I kind of knew, like, everyone else is walking. There was literally the guy sitting in front of me was like, he opened his phone, checking his Instagram. I'm still like, fuck, I can't even. The mosquitoes are landing on my face right now, and I don't have the wherewithal to like slap them off my face. This was maybe an hour after I had already thrown up. Still cannot move. It got to the point where everyone started packing up their stuff to go home, and I'm still laying on the floor, like unable to function. And they told me, it's time to go now. You need to get up. They brought me some fruit, which, it took all the strength I had to lift the fruit to the mouth and take a bite and put it back down. You know what I mean? It was like the fruit weighed 100 pounds. They told us at the beginning, you have to throw away your own bucket of puke, and you're not going to do it in the bathroom. You're going to dump it at the base of a tree. We're in the jungle, so trees everywhere. I'm like, okay. As I was walking out of the temple, I'm walking like an old lady with a walker, I'm afraid I'm going to fall over. I'm afraid I'm going to die going down these stairs. Nobody's there to help me. I see the shaman at the bottom of the stairs, and I just say, I'm really not doing very well. Where's the closest tree where I can throw this thing away? And he kind of had an attitude with me. We told you have to throw it away yourself. Well, I'm not asking you to do it for me. Just show me the closest place. Well, you have to find the tree that calls to you. Well, I don't think I can make it over there. So just please, the closest one, right? And he's being like facetious with me. So I just said to him, can you help me? Oh, okay. Kind of begrudgingly, right? And I felt like he had been positive before this. I don't know, whatever I was doing was clearly rubbing him the wrong way. And it made me feel like the emperor's new clothes. Like, if you didn't see the clothes, then they recognize, okay, you're one of those people, And he knew that I knew there ain't no emperor's clothes in my case, right? He takes me over to this tree. I barely walking. He walks so far, so fast ahead of me. I lost sight of him. It's pitch dark. We're in the jungle. There's no lights. I'm literally clinging onto the side of the temple as I'm walking over there so that I can make sure I don't fall over. I throw the bucket away. He's not satisfied with how I throw the bucket away. You should find the right tree. And, I make it back inside where I have to roll up my mat and collect all my, I had a water bottle, and I got to get all my stuff, my backpack, and get my shoes on and so forth. So again, they told us at the beginning, don't leave any garbage. So I don't want to leave any garbage, right? So I had eaten that couple of pieces was a slice of watermelon. So I had the rind of the watermelon, and I wanted to throw it away. So I walked to the front of the temple where the lady had handed me the shot of ayahuasca and where they had been playing the instruments up to the front. And as I was walking up there, I could see one guy's holding a flashlight in his mouth, and then the lady is counting the money. Like drug dealer, just stacks of cash, just counting it all in the temple. Ceremony is not over. There are still myself and my friend that went with me. We are still in the temple. And I walked up and I said, excuse me, where can I throw away my watermelon rind? So engrossed in the money, they didn't even hear me. And I was like, okay, I just threw it in one of the puke buckets. I just want to get the hell out of there at this point. So make it to the car. I drove. It was in Playa del Carmen, which is an hour away from where I live in Cancun. It's totally dark, and I'm telling my friend, I don't know if I'm going to be able to drive. I could barely walk. I don't know what's going to happen. It took 10 minutes of driving from where we were at the temple, driving through a dirt road in the jungle. So there's no traffic. It's very safe. I'm not dealing with highways or what. I'm just driving in this dirt road through the jungle. So if it's not working out on the dirt road, when we get to the highway or whatever, I'm just going to, we'll get an Uber or we'll get a hotel or whatever. So we haven't talked this whole time. So I don't know how his experience went other than seeing him jump up and crying for help and whatever. And I knew that he threw up because I saw him throwing up. So he starts talking about his experience, and basically what happened, he had like a hot flash. And that's why he was calling for help and needed the water. And then he ran outside because he thought it would be colder outside. So I told him about my experience, and I said I don't want to judge people that had a positive experience from this, or I'm sure this is a unique experience to me because of my own PTSD issues and whatever. So I feel like what I'm going to say is like super judgmental, and it's not how I'm meaning it to sound. It's just, this is what happened for me, So I told him my experience, and, he was speechless. He didn't really know what to say. And I was like, well, I'm really happy it was a good experience for you. But he described a lot of the same things that I described. He said at one point he just didn't want to be there anymore. Like, I don't want to be on this ayahuasca trip. I want it to end because, the puking, it really is like food poisoning. Your body is sick, so you just really, you don't feel good physically, and he was just tired of it, and he just wanted it to be over, and he went outside, and the shaman kind of talked to him, and he said he felt better. And so anyway, after I got home, my friend was fine. Went to sleep, had a shower, eating normally. The next day, totally fine. That next day, I had a nap all day. I could still was, very weak feeling. And that first night after the ayahuasca, I had flashbacks of the wavy lines and the echoey music. And I was scared. It was scary. I felt afraid to go to sleep with my light off. I asked my daughter to come and sleep in my bed with me. I literally was touching her the whole night. It was just my hand on the shoulder or whatever, but I felt scared. And sleeping with the light on, I woke up literally every half an hour the whole night just to check. Okay, I'm still in my room. Nothing's moving. Nothing weird is happening. I'm not on any sort of trip or drugged on the floor. I'm in my room. I'm safe. Everything's okay.
Struggle to meditate? Visit spiritualvirago.com to get my free report, The Intentional Morning No Meditation Meditation, today.
And then that next day, so now we're 2 days post-ceremony, that happened to coincide with when I was supposed to get my second vaccine for COVID. So, drive over to the place. It was very stressful. Driving back. Now, let me preface this by saying I have been a DJ for 13 years. Definitely a fan of music. As I'm driving back, I'm hearing the music that's just normally playing on the radio in the car, and I thought to myself, I hate music. I was like, what the fuck is happening to me? I kept having these negative thoughts coming in. Like when I was driving home from the ayahuasca, I was very certain that I was going to die. And I told my friend, I don't know if we're going to make it. It's not that I felt that I was going to crash the car, but I felt that my personal energy was so negative that I was going to attract a car accident. Do you know what I mean? And I was feeling while I was driving sorry for my friend. I'm like, well, my energy is so negative right now that, you know, we're going to die in a car accident. He's going to die just because he's sitting here next to me. It was very scary. I would definitely put this in the category of a near-death experience. Anyway, so driving back from the second COVID vaccination, I have this thought that I hate music, and I'm scared, legit scared. You know, I've never had thoughts like that. And I keep driving a little bit further. I pull up to a stoplight. You know, if you've been to Mexico, there's frequently poor people begging for money at the stoplights. So this very shriveled, harmless old lady came over to the window of my car with her cup. And I always give money, even if it's just, 5 pesos or whatever. I always give something, unless I literally have no money in the car, in which case then I may give food. I'll give, a granola bar or something I have for my purse or whatever. But I always try to give to the people that are asking at the stoplights. But I see this old lady come she's sweet granny, okay? She came by the window, and my impulse was that I wanted to punch through the glass and hit her face. Okay, I've never punched anybody in my life. I've never really wanted to punch somebody. Clearly I've, fantasized or whatever, like, man, I'd like to punch that guy's lights out. But you know what I mean? I never really wanted to actually punch somebody. And so I'm terrified. I don't know if this if this negativity is going to be ongoing, if it's going to last for a long time, or if this is going to alleviate. It did. After the second day, I did begin to feel a lot better. And part of it was because when I'm in a situation like this, I just start researching. I have to understand what has happened to me, and that helps me regain a sense of control a little bit, right? So that's what happened. So I start reading, and I wanted to share with you this really helpful article that I came across that's written by a woman who considers herself to be an ayahuasca integration specialist. So she works at one of those, ayahuasca retreat places in South America, I'm guessing, and she counsels people after ayahuasca to help them integrate whatever they learned or saw or whatever, peak experience they had during the ayahuasca. She helps them integrate that into their normal lives for when they go home. So this person, not only has she done a lot of ayahuasca, but she has worked with a lot of people that have done ayahuasca. And I found this article on Google, and it's called "We Need to Talk About When People Feel Worse After Drinking Ayahuasca." Okay, I'm going to read some kind of excerpts from the article, but if you're someone who has PTSD, has had PTSD, or I really think in this particular case, complex PTSD is going to be the biggest red flag for maybe just considering some other therapeutic modalities that are not ayahuasca or any kind of psychedelic. Okay, so she writes, "Yet there is a thorny issue at the heart of the ayahuasca path that people often avoid talking about. Some people actually feel not better but worse after drinking the brew. What should we make of this fact? Let's consider some examples." A basic hallmark of a traumatic experience is anything that's too much, too fast, too soon for a particular human nervous system to handle. A major determinant in whether an experience generates lasting trauma is how innately resourced a person is. And she talks about the plant medicine generates extremely strong and sometimes fragmenting experiences. And let's not beat around the bush. Ayahuasca can be incredibly scary. 100-odd ceremonies in, I still feel apprehension every time I drink. Furthermore, I can still slide into fear when the level of intensity ratchets up. I have had my own experiences with something I semi-facetiously call post-ceremony stress disorder. Now, if I had to describe the way I felt with the I hate music and punching the granny and sleeping with the lights on, post-ceremony stress disorder seems pretty fucking accurate. She continues. I have also witnessed some extremely strong reactions that can manifest in ayahuasca retreats. People tend to respond to these overwhelming experiences with whatever is their default method of control, fight or flight. Then she quotes, and this is really where the article started to hit me, and I thought, okay, now I understand. She says, Dr. Gabor Mate said some intriguing things at a Psychedelics Science 2017 workshop on ayahuasca. He suggested that what we call a bad trip could be a reactivation of early childhood trauma. These can be overwhelming experiences, infant or even prenatal. They're encoded not in the brain's centers of cognitive memory, because these don't develop fully until 18 to 24 months of age, but directly into the body. Okay? When these feelings erupt within an ayahuasca session, they can manifest as overwhelming sensations and emotions that seem unrelated to any known circumstance, arising in disconnected, incoherent form. They're unaccompanied by any sense of meaning. The chaotic nature of certain difficult ayahuasca experiences can lead to overwhelming sensations, incomprehensible surges of powerful emotions like terror, grief, and despair. Correspondingly, these emotions parallel the overwhelming feelings that a small child might experience in trauma. And then she explains exactly how early childhood trauma, particularly for children that were earlier than 2 years old, that were pre-verbal, how this is tapping into the brain in the same way. And this is where I really felt like, okay, I need to go do some deeper work, because what my mom did damaged my brain, okay? She writes, a baby or small child can often bear an overwhelming experience if there's some kind of a holding environment. The sustained presence of a loving, attuned adult who can emphasize with the child's experience and serve as a bigger nervous system for the energies to pass through works best. From attunement with this kind of presence, infants learn that they can endure difficult emotions and that these will eventually pass. This is the cultivation of resilience. Knowing you can move through distress and ultimately be okay. Many children don't have this secure holding environment or receive only a partial version of it. In these cases, the child resorts to more primal survival mechanisms. These mechanisms are often a kind of shut-off or disassociation that stuffs away the overwhelming experience in the body and brain. So that's its present. So the way, I've read a lot about complex PTSD. And for those of you who are not familiar with this term, complex PTSD is when you grow up in PTSD all day, every day. Literally, your living room is like the front lines of the war. You're being insulted every day. You're being belittled. Your other siblings are being favored over you for no reason. One of my mom's favorite things. And the thing is, these things that cause complex PTSD are so fucking subtle. You don't realize you're even being abused. I'll give you an example. My mom would get a candy bar. And I just have my one sibling, my brother, and she would say, Stacy, you have to cut the candy bar in half. Okay. Levi, my brother, he gets to pick which half of the candy bar he wants. So clearly, I have the responsibility of cutting the candy bar, and then he's going to take the biggest piece. So either way, I lose. And like, well, can't Levi ever cut it in half? How about if you cut it in half? How about if you just bought 2 candy bars? No, can't do it that way. Okay? Just these subtle little things that you don't even realize as a kid that your parents aren't supposed to treat you this way, right? Like my first memory of my mom is me standing at the side of her sewing machine while my brother was having nap time. So he's like 2 and I'm like 4. And, she's at the table, she's sewing like 100 miles an hour, like she's vicious, sewing this seam. And I just stood on the side of the sewing machine and I wanted to show her like something I had drawn or, something I colored. And I stood there and I waited and I waited and I waited. She knows I'm standing there. I'm a foot away from her. She wouldn't even turn and look at me. She doesn't even have to look at me to just say, give me a sec, I'm almost finished. She just completely ignored me. Okay? Now, we grow up thinking that abuse involves being punched, being pushed, being burned with a cigarette, I didn't realize until decades later that my mom completely ignoring me is actually far more abusive than if she had just reached out and punched me. She would have done me a favor if she had punched me, because then at least I would have known I was being abused. You understand? So
hey, it's Stacy. Did you know that I offer speaking and coaching services?
Anyway, because of the nature of complex PTSD, what really happens is the brain becomes the mom. When your mom doesn't take care of you, the brain says, okay, we need to repress these memories and put these things over here so that you can continue to function and grow, right? Well, when the brain creates these sort of partitions like that, something like ayahuasca happens and your brain perceives that as something that we need to, okay, this is one of those type of things. We need to put that over here and we need to just disassociate, right? Which I think is ultimately what happened in my particular case with the ayahuasca. Now, I wanted to, a couple more things before I wrap up this episode. I know it's getting kind of long. If you are a person who has suffered from CPTSD or PTSD, I highly, highly, highly recommend some other modes of therapy before you consider psychedelics, especially ayahuasca. The first thing that I would recommend is something called EMDR. I think it's eye movement desensitization, something. But essentially what happens is when both sides of your brain are activated and you walk through a memory in your head, it allows your brain to take it from being filed over here as like long-term memory and move it into short-term memory. When it's in short-term memory, it's not a theme that decisions are made from. You know what I mean? So EMDR involves no chemicals in your body. You can stop at any point, whereas with ayahuasca, once you start, even you can puke it up. That's not going to make it get out of your system any faster. You're down for several hours, and really, it's still in your body for several days. So EMDR, if it's too much, you can stop any point. You just tell the therapist, I don't want to do this anymore. No problem. It's done. You're over. EMDR, I did it after ayahuasca, and I had the experience with EMDR that I thought I would have with ayahuasca. All these kind of things, it's like being in a dream state, but you're lucid, and all these kind of things just came out, and you're actually having the opportunity to feel these things that are coming out. And I mean, if you've done any work around trauma or therapy at all, you know you'll have to feel these old, pains and traumas in order to move on. You can't just stuff them away and ignore them. So through the EMDR, I cried, I felt the feelings, and then they were just gone. Literally just poof, gone. Okay, so I highly recommend try EMDR first because it has none of the negative implications that ayahuasca had. There's also TRE, trauma reducing exercises, I think. TRE is a modality of stretching, and it involves like doing some kind of primal shaking that allows the body to sort of sweat out, shake off the deepest level in the muscles where we hold that trauma. And just like EMDR, no side effects, you can stop at any point, completely natural, no substances in your body. So these are two different things that you can try before trying ayahuasca. If these things don't work, you're still suffering from the PTSD, give ayahuasca a try. But I really recommend these things first. Last thing I wanted to talk about is, spiritual guru Ram Dass is very well known for his background in psychedelics. He was a LSD researcher at Harvard University before he became Ram Dass by going to India and studying under Maharaji. So I was curious when I had this experience, what does Ram Dass have to say about psychedelics? So I started digging around, and there really wasn't a lot of quotes or information, from someone I thought was so famous for having been like on an acid trip for all the 60s. I expected there would be a little bit more material, and there really wasn't. But I wanted to share with you a few quotes from Ram Dass, and I think it really shows how he evolved to becoming the spiritual teacher that he was. So some of the things that he said. Psychedelics could chemically override the thought patterns in your brain so that you are open to the moment. But once the chemical loses its power, the old habit patterns take over again. With them comes a subtle despair that without chemicals you are a prisoner of your own thoughts. The trap of high experiences, however they occur, is that you become attached to their memory and you try to recreate them. These memories compel you to try to reproduce the high. Ultimately, they trap you. Okay, that's from ramdass.org. And I have a couple more here. If the high was too powerful in comparison to the rest of your life, it overrides the present and keeps you focused on the past. The paradox, of course, is that were you to let go of the past, you would find in the present moment the same quality that you once had. But because you're trying to repeat the past, you lose the moment. That's also from ramdass.org. This one is an article from Scientific American called Baba Ram Dass and the Tale of the Acid Gobbling Guru. When Maharaji asked Ram Dass for medicine, plant medicine, psychedelic medicine, Ram Dass gave him 3 LSD pills, each containing 305 micrograms of acid, a very strong dose. The guru gulped down all 3 pills. All day long, I'm there with him, Ram Dass wrote, and every now and then Maharaji twinkles at me, and nothing happens. LSD did not affect Maharaji. Ram Dass implied because the guru already had such a profoundly mystical outlook. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened to me. I definitely don't feel that I'm anywhere near in the league of Maharaji. I haven't spent my life, in an ashram meditating. But I do think that's an interesting perspective to consider. And I mean, really, like when I got to the ayahuasca ceremony, the shaman that was there, he said, we all have, the universal love and energy. It's within all of us, and we have all the answers already inside of us, and and then that whole thing. And I really felt like at the end of it, then what the fuck do we need the ayahuasca for? If all that stuff is already inside of us, which we all know that it is, then what's the ayahuasca for? We could just meditate and tap into the same thing. We could just write down our dreams. We could just get in the zone, Anyway. Okay, this is a quote from Maharaji himself. And he says, "These plant medicines will allow you to come and visit Christ, but you can only stay for 2 hours and then you have to leave again. This is not the true samadhi. It's better to become Christ than to visit him. But even the visit of a saint for a moment is useful. But love is the most powerful medicine." So I feel like he's saying, if it's something that you need at this particular moment, then have it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, he's saying, once you evolve to a certain level, you're not going to be interested in this anymore. You know what I mean? If you're on the path of becoming a Christ-like being, you're not down here puking on the floor, drugged out of your mind, So I thought this was just really interesting that, someone that is just this very beloved spiritual healer that, is very well known for being, really an advocate of psychedelic experiences as a path to spirituality. Really in the end came to a point where he's saying it's a crutch. To me, that's what those quotes are saying. So anyway, thank you so much for tuning in. This is The Female Flex, and I am your host, Stacey Nichols, owner of spiritualvirago.com.
This has been The Female Flex. Please be sure to like and subscribe.